I'm so excited. I'm sitting across from a new friend. Hi, welcome, Britt.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, this is amazing. I am so grateful that we recently got connected and something you shared with me when we first chatted, what you're doing, and you said you're doing this against a lot of odds and adversity. And what you're doing, more of a state of being, is you're pregnant. You are how many weeks now?
I'm like 31 and a half weeks.
31 and a half weeks. And I mean, your story is so remarkable being a single mama, a widow. You've gone through a lot of fertility treatments, a really long journey of adversity. I haven't heard a story like yours.
Hmm.
I'm really grateful that you reached out and, you shared with me you're doing things that might seem impossible, right? Mind
Yeah,
you, you're also 49 years old.
yeah, yeah,
Oh my gosh. Like take
yeah.
it, share with us like where you're at right now. You said before the call that you're feeling better than you ever have really in your pregnancy and just the journey that you've taken. Um, it's my gosh, I'm just in awe because you work in somatic work. You're a pleasure and transformation coach, a birth educator, a doula. I mean, you have so much rich experience on the body, listening to your body's wisdom. And I'm sure that's what you're doing right now, right? Tuning into your body's wisdom.
Yeah, finally I am. As you said, it took me so long to get here, and with all of the losses that I've endured, it was hard to really drop into the pregnancy. The pregnancy in the beginning was really physically difficult and uncomfortable, and it had like a whole emotional component that kind of went along with it, where I actually had kind of buyer's remorse.
Mm.
And it was weird because after 20 something years of working with people in pregnancy, I had, I think, only heard one person that I was working with wish she wasn't pregnant. Because normally I like work with people who are like excited to have a baby and they're doing prenatal yoga and birth preparation and want to consciously, prepare and connect. And here I was, the person that had done that work my whole life. And I was like, I don't even know if I want this anymore. Like, this is so hard. It's so scary. It's so uncomfortable. There's so many unknowns. And the medical system, even though I was, getting all my care from midwives, I had a little bit of crossover with the medical system, which was just like negative, 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 negative. So I I told my midwife and all my other midwife friends, like, I don't know if I really want to do this anymore. And they were like, yeah, that's normal. And I'm like, what?
Keep doing the kind of work that you've been doing.
Yeah. And they were just like really validating that actually it was probably a good sign
Mm.
that the pregnancy was going to stick because,
Okay.
because I was feeling the realness of it.
Mm.
And I was feeling like the reality, the gravity of what it is to be, almost 50, single, pregnant, widowed, just like all of the different factors. Also I have like blood sugar issues. So, pretty much they had me on like, three different high risk lists. And yeah, so
Wow.
it took a while, and I had a session with my doula, who is a colleague of mine for over 20 years, and she's also a shaman. She's amazing. She would actually be a great person to have on the podcast.
Yeah.
um, but her name's Sandra, and she really helped me make a transition emotionally, and let go of some of the negativity, and just kind of use my spiritual practice to lean back and allow. And ever since then, I've started to just shift more and more. Like every week, I feel more positive, more relaxed, more optimistic, more connected. But it definitely took a while, and it took a lot of getting out of my head, which is, of
Mm.
course, what I teach other people.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I just think there's so much wisdom you have to share for listeners who are maybe navigating through a fertility path and being an older, quote, older mama. Like your path to motherhood was not linear. um, And you shared with me you've gone through a lot of loss. You've experienced IVF and IUIs. Would you like to share kind of when did that begin for you? You were married to your husband, Eric, right? And um, share with us, like, did you always want to be a mama? Was that something you had planned for?
Yeah, so I've never known a moment where I didn't want to be a mother.
Mm.
Like my entire life, I it just I never questioned it. In fact, it wasn't until I was with Eric and I was in my early 40s and he was in his early 50s and we were just getting together and he was the most intentional man that I have ever met. And he was like, okay, I think I'm on board with this baby thing, but why do you want this so bad? Like, why are we doing this? Why are we talking about this? And so it really did invite me to, for the first time in my life, to question it, to consider, like, why do I want this? And could I imagine my life without it? And I pretty much got to the place where I was just like, well, this is just my destiny. This is just what I was meant to do. It's what I've dedicated my life to support in other people. And I think that that has something to do with my own desire, my own drive. And anytime I thought about putting it down, I just felt awful. Like it did not feel in alignment with myself. And, and so yeah, so it was really, really clear. And I would, very shortly after we got together, I was in my early 40s. He was in his early 50s. So it was like, we're not going to waste any time here. Like we're not going to spend 5 years getting to know each other. Like
Right.
either we start, so pretty much exactly a year after we came together, we conceived our first pregnancy.
Naturally.
And it was totally spontaneous and beautiful and cosmic and spiritual and sexy and all of those things. It just seemed like it was completely meant to be. It was unbelievable. I was 42, first try. He was 51. And that baby had a genetic issue. And so at 14 weeks, we terminated. And then we got pregnant again naturally a couple months later, and we miscarried that one. And but again, it was like each time it was like, well, it happened so easily the first time and it happened easily the second time, so it must be meant to be. And so we just kind of kept going and trusting and releasing and understanding that, like, when you're older, your egg quality can lead to more losses. So we were just sort of like, okay, we're in it for the long haul. We really want to do this. He was amazing and, like, changing his diet, his lifestyle, so that he could have the best sperm quality. I was doing all the egg quality supplements, and together, I mean, we were doing all the, like, conscious partnering, conscious sexuality stuff, and just really giving it everything we had. Our whole lives were absorbed by this intention to have a baby, and it was really beautiful, but it was also like everything was kind of on hold. Like, we wanted to go to Indonesia, we wanted to go to Costa Rica, we wanted to do all these things, but we wouldn't do any of that because we were like, well, we don't want to mess up my cycle. We don't want to travel to a foreign country. Like, we were just really like in a holding pattern, but in a joyful way.
That's key. I think,
Yeah.
people put their life on hold and stop traveling, but you're looking at it from a perspective of we're keeping this joy alive.
Yeah, and it was a devotion, it was a deep devotion. And we live in California, so you can still travel a lot in California. You can still do amazing things. And so
Yeah.
we had incredible California adventures and went on retreats into hot springs and all this stuff, and kept having a lot of fun. And then we went like a year without conceiving. And so that was like, we had been consulting with a kind of more of like a holistic obstetrician at first. And he was like, let's just put you on letrozole and just kind of like see if we can just increase your egg supply. And we tried that for a while. And every time we went in to like check the follicles, I had an abundance of follicles. It wasn't, it wasn't happening. And so we spent like a year or so on letrozole, and again, all the supplements and all the things, and all the Mayan abdominal therapy and the acupuncture. He even went to get a womb massage. He went to get fertility acupuncture. I mean, he was like a
I've had
1,000%.
male womb massage, like
No, no, but I was like, he was kind of he was
not
really
womb, you know what I mean, but like an abdominal. I don't know to have like
yeah. Well, so like the part of what is so brilliant about the modality of Mayan abdominal therapy is that they're increasing circulation to your sexual organs, right? And to your reproductive system. And so he was like, but he felt like he had like spiritually that he had a womb. And he was just really connecting to his creative source. So he was like,
very
well,
into. Okay, okay. And that's so cool because you had experience with all these different holistic modalities, right?
yeah,
Within so this was intuitive to you to explore these because I think for a lot of women listening, this may be new. Like people might not know what Arvigo abdominal massage is, and
yeah.
there's so many holistic practices. So I'm glad you're touching upon this.
Yeah, and you know what? Like looking back and seeing how the journey unfolded, I'm so glad I did all this stuff. And this is, I think, really important for people who are in the process to consider. And this is something I talk about as a doula and a birth educator a lot, which is that I wanted to feel like I was doing everything I possibly could in my power to conceive the baby in the way that felt aligned with my energy, with my values, with who I am in the world. And the other thing is that every single one of these practitioners is like a witch or a wizard of fertility wisdom, like really carrying this ancient wisdom and the sense of possibility. Because I went to, I think I went to, I told you before, but I think I went to like 5 different fertility clinics, and I like saw 8 different doctors.
I mean, that in itself is like a whole story. We're sharing five
Right. That's a whole story.
8 different doctors. I mean,
And
people are like drop their jaw on them. What?
and you know what? It None of them made me feel optimistic. None of them supported me emotionally. None of them took into account who I am as a whole human. And so every time I went to get my Mayan abdominal therapy or my acupuncture or went to see the naturopath, they were connected to all of me. They were aware of my lifestyle, my spiritual practice, my exercise, my diet. Like they were helping me hold the whole picture. And that was essential, even though I also sort of, especially late as I progressed, felt like, okay, I'm going to need Western medicine to get me pregnant. I kind of, at some point, gradually, like I started in 2018 was the first pregnancy, and it's 2024 and I'm pregnant. So that's 6 years, right? And it was like gradually I started to accept I'm going to need Western medicine. I don't like Western medicine. I'm not interested in like having all the side effects of the fertility drugs and everything. But I was like, you know what? I need to do it, but I want to feel like myself. I want to feel like me. I want to feel relaxed. I want to feel present. I don't want to be stressed about it. So having a monthly womb massage and having weekly acupuncture treatments and going to the chiropractor and dancing and doing yoga and all the things that I was into and still am into, that was nourishing my whole being.
Gosh, this is everything. This is everything. I mean, it's
Yeah.
and connected to yourself. So
Yeah.
I'm a huge believer. You're speaking my language.
Yeah, and not just to myself, but also like we did a lot of communing with the spirit of the baby and really talking to the baby. And Eric and I had a practice of working with psychedelic plant medicine. And so that was also a part of our practice of praying for the baby and tuning into the baby spirit and healing our hearts and seeing what was, kind of in the way or what we needed to work on or how we were processing our grief about our losses. So there was just like so many layers because as you know, it's like when you're on a long conception journey and you go through several losses, grief is a huge part of it. And again, the clinic doesn't usually touch it. And I felt like even just standard therapy wasn't like, I didn't need to talk about it. I needed to release it. I needed to move it. I needed to express it. I needed to learn from it. And so there was a lot of like embodied work that had to be done around the grieving process and around the staying open, because it's like one thing to lose something or someone and to like heal that, but it's another thing to lose and keep going.
Huge. I want to go back to when you said you did the plant medicine. Was that during your IVF cycles or before when you were trying before treatment?
Both. Like, so
Oh,
never anytime I was in like a waiting phase,
mhm.
right? So it would always be sort of like in between cycles. Um, so prior to IVF, I would do ayahuasca occasionally. I stopped doing that as I got deeper into the fertility stuff, and I transitioned into mushrooms. And after Eric died, I transitioned into MDMA. So I kind of, have gone in a lot of different directions depending on what was needed.
So that with the timeline, so after your losses with your natural, I hate the word natural, pregnancies
Yeah.
before fertility treatments, then in 2020 is when you started IVF. Is I have a few
So
notes.
yeah, so 2020, we
Like
started.
surprise
Um,
pandemic, we're gonna start.
so we were like, by the time the pandemic had started, we were really ready to try IUI, and our insurance provided us with 3 cycles of IUI.
Wow.
And of course the pandemic started, and we couldn't do it. But I have a dear friend who's a home birth midwife who did some IUI cycles for us at home. So
Okay.
we did a few of those without any remarkable results, without a pregnancy. And then we did in the summer of or spring of 2020, once the clinics opened back up, like in June, we had a successful IUI cycle, which I think we did with a trigger shot. I stayed on letrozole. We did a trigger shot, and I got pregnant, and I miscarried. Like I was in the process of losing the baby. Like by the time I got to the 7 week ultrasound. Um, so yeah, so that was 2020, and we decided we would do the remaining 2 more IUIs that we had left from our insurance. With UCSF, we would do those, and then if we didn't succeed at those after I healed from the miscarriage, so that was my third loss, my second miscarriage. Um, so we decided that would be when we would transition to egg donor IVF, because I wasn't, and by that point I was in my mid 40s, and nobody ever had recommended going in after my eggs. From the very beginning, everyone was like, if you're going to do IVF, you got to use donor eggs. And that was kind of the party line across all the different clinics that I went to. And so we had sort of like surrendered to the idea of doing IVF with an egg donor, but we were still like, it was a lot of grief. We had to go through a ton of grief. I was like, the baby isn't going to look like me. They're not going to have my heritage. They're not going to have my hair. They're not, like there's so much that I really had to work through. He was more, he was still going to be inside that baby. So he didn't have as much to work through, but I did. But what ended up happening was we found a friend of a friend who had frozen her eggs many years prior. Unfortunately, she had frozen them kind of late. She was 35 when she froze them, which for egg donors is not the recommended age. But she gave us 8 eggs. And so in the spring of 2021, we made some embryos with her eggs. And the embryos were not good. We only got a few, and they didn't make it past day 3. Well, they got to day 3, and they were like, either we put these in or it's not going to go. They're not very good, but we can at least try.
Okay.
And since we had gotten that far, we just were like, okay, screw it. Like we're here. Let's just try. And so we put those in, we put the two that were left in and it didn't take.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that was like, I mean, it was actually harder for him than it was for me, because I was not losing my resolve. I was like, I had that like understanding that this wasn't like mathematically the best equation. And I was like, okay, well, we're just going to keep going. And he was like, wait a second. I need to take the summer off. I need some space. This is actually rocking my world. I thought this was going to work. I
And
thought we
how
had
old was
all
he
this.
at this point? How old was he then? At this point, you were 45? Eight.
I, I had just turned 46.
Wow.
Yeah, I had just turned 46, so that made him 55. And yeah, and so we just decided that we would take a couple months off. So that was like beginning of June, and we were like, okay, let's just take a couple months off and regroup. Meanwhile, I called the egg donation clinic the next day. Like
So you were out of embryos at this point, correct?
we had no more embryos, but his sperm had been frozen, which later came in handy.
So you
Um,
decided to freeze some sperm just
we
for
didn't
the,
decide to.
oh,
It
they
just
had
so happened.
from that. From
Yeah, so they had more than they needed to make those embryos. And so they just kept the sperm, which we didn't even talk about or think about. Like it wasn't like, it was just like, oh, there's sperm in the bank, but it wasn't really that relevant. We were going to switch to a different clinic that specialized in working with egg donors that was significantly cheaper and wasn't in San Francisco.
Mm.
So I called them the next day, even
Wow.
though he was like, I was like, I'm going to just keep going and figure out what we're going to do in the fall. You catch up with me when you are available, but I'm not stopping. Like,
Moving forward, I'm going.
well, I had this, Lisa, like you probably talk to a lot of women like this. I knew that my body could do this.
I love that. Yeah.
I knew it. I knew that it was just the eggs. I knew that if I only had good eggs and embryos, that my womb was good enough. Oh, by the way, I have all these fibroids. So that's like this whole other thing. But we kept checking on them, and I had taken one out in 2017, and that was the only one that anyone thought could cause a problem. And there's one that's like on my left side that they kept watching, and it was sort of borderline, like if it's any bigger, we wouldn't do IVF without surgery, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm not doing the surgery because then I'd have to have a cesarean because of the way they'd have to cut my womb. So anyway, so that's just like this whole
Yeah.
other lurking issue in the background is like, everyone's like, well, we don't know if the IVF is going to work because we don't know if the fibroids are going to take the blood flow away from the baby. But
You
I
trusted your
knew,
intuition, your inner knowing. It's everything. It's
yeah,
everything.
I just knew it. I knew I could do it. And I just let that carry me. And so when that cycle didn't work, I was like, whatever, we just have to find good eggs. We just need 20 something year old eggs and it'll all
So when you
work
called
out.
that clinic, what happened then? Did they connect you with an egg donor?
So I just started the conversations and he was like kind of slowly coming in. And then he got ill. And that became his journey towards his transition, towards leaving his body. Um, so so it was like we had just kind of started it. We were like in the conversation. We were having our like fun summer, and then he got sick and died. And
Yeah, Britt.
you know, yeah,
So
that
so this was in just a short period after you're moving forward. You wanted to
yeah.
call.
So he died in September of 2021, and that cycle that didn't take was June of 2021. So just a few months later, he died.
Oh, I can't believe how sudden.
Yeah, it was very sudden, and I mean, I'm glazing over it now because it's not the topic that I want to spend time on, but but yeah, it was the most painful, excruciating, traumatizing, horrible moment of my life. And I was like, well, either way, I'm going to have this baby. Like, I just, I was just like, okay, this sucks. This is horrible. The only thing that actually got me through the whole death and the years after, it's been almost 3 years now after his death, was just like knowing that the child was coming. And it was just like this trust. And as he was aware that he was on the way out, the only thing that he asked for was that I have his baby. It was literally his only final wishes, was have a baby with my frozen sperm, share my artwork and my journals with the baby. That was it. Yeah. Yeah. And so he really, like, I just couldn't even believe that we had that sperm at that point. It was like, oh,
Amazing. I
and
I read on your website, I just have to read this. The experience of losing my beloved husband, Eric, and choosing what becoming a widow means to me has been one of the greatest portals of growth and transformation I have ever known.
yeah,
Like, you're remarkable.
thank you.
I'm crying.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah.
your wish, and you went forward. And
Yeah.
was it
And
you
and
go?
and I guess I just want to say, like, in, you know, and holding just the deep feelings that come up around it, that that statement was like the truest, deepest statement I've ever made in my life. And it it called me into myself. It was like an initiation, this like next level of arriving inside of myself, because here I had this like unbelievable partner, just this part, like I had never witnessed a partner that was that focused on a fertility journey. I'd never met a partner that was that intentional and full of magic and aligned, and like every step of the way we were together, right? And I had to I had to stay with that feeling, even though he wasn't in his body anymore. And so that is what called me into pursuing the coaching program that I went through, that inevitably brought me into this other layer of my work, and doing much, much deeper work around moving emotions through the body, healing through our sexuality, healing through pleasure, claiming our power in the messy places in life. Like, it's one thing to claim your power when everything is going your way. It's a whole nother thing to claim your power when you're living in the mud of life, when you're like literally just like in a pile of shit. Like, I literally felt like I was dead. Like I felt decimated. I felt completely obliterated. And I thankfully had years and years and years of spiritual practice that allowed me to, and a community that allowed me to just like be this pile of mush, to like feel like my life was like literally burned down to the studs. And what was there, it was like I had myself, I had my community, and I had this baby spirit.
Love it.
I had this drive to have this baby, and then I had this like partner that was on the other side that was still there for me. And so that work called me to like really channel his energy, to really like stay true to me, because all I had was me. And so it just like kind of lit me up. It was like I heard people talk about how, oh, the second year after you lose your partner is worse than the first year, and all this stuff. But the second year for me was all about getting pregnant. So all I thought about that whole second year after Eric died was this baby.
I love that you just turned to pleasure. I've read what you've shared about turning your pain into pleasure and really living from this lit up place, doing the healing work, turning to art, turning to all of these, nature things that keep you alive, enliven you, support you. Um,
It's like
so
ordinary reality is a bitch. Like, I mean, this, you talk to people about this all the time. It's just like if you're staying with your lab, results and with how many times you've lost a pregnancy or how many IVF cycles haven't worked or how many relationships haven't worked out or how your finances are stressful or like,
yeah,
all of the
this
things,
goes
right?
on. Yeah.
If you just stay in ordinary reality, it's like it's not inspiring to really keep
Mhm.
going, right? And so what I started to do even more, which I'd already been doing, which is why I was like kind of okay, was I just started to keep expanding into a bigger reality that included the spiritual realm, that included the unseen realm, that included the realm that my husband still existed in, that included the realm that my baby lived in, that included the realm of like my ancestors, of my calling, of this like deeper knowing of myself. And again, that's where psychedelics and also the work that I do now with breath work and altered state work and this embodied somatic work really is incredibly supportive and shamanic work. It's like really lifting the veils and going beyond just the nuts and bolts of like everyday reality. I couldn't do it any other way. Like I've been thriving the entire time pretty much because I have an expanded view of reality.
I love this conversation. This is like so fortunate, like having this podcast and getting to bring people on like you that this is what it's about, how did you
Mm-hmm.
frame it? You're living in an expanded reality.
Mm-hmm. And it's my reality. It may not be like consensus reality. Like people probably thought I was fucking insane, like you're 49 years old, you're gonna have a baby on your own in the most expensive city in the country, like, and without, I don't have benefits, I work for myself, like I don't have a giant savings account, like, you know I just have always known that I needed to do this. So I've done it and I'm just making it work.
You're not living in a fierce scarcity kind of mindset at all. It's just abundant. I'm going to be taken care of, held, protected, guided. Right?
The fear comes up like every day. The fear is there
Let's talk about
because
that because I think a lot of women can relate. How are you befriending fear? How are you allowing it in, making space for it?
I let myself feel it. I usually have to tell someone about it. I might have to cry about it. One of the things that I do with my clients and have been trained to do, and that I also do with myself, is I'll have a tantrum, I'll have a meltdown. So you can't just like keep pushing it down. It'll just keep fermenting and getting bigger. So, or disrupting my sleep,
Mhm.
raising my blood sugar, like all the things, right? So I have to meet it, be with
Mhm.
it, hear what it's talking about, and decide, do I need to respond to it or do I just need to like let it be there? Right. And like, is there a resource that I need? And the majority of the time, if I just find the right support, like I talk to my doula or my midwife. So I have like literally the best birth team you could ever imagine after working in the birth community in San Francisco for 24 years. I've always known who were going to be my people, right? So I have an amazing doula. I have incredible, more than one midwife, but I have one primary midwife. I have like the top fertility and pregnancy acupuncturist who's a magical witch. I have, all of these incredible people that are supporting me. All my friends
Mhm.
are dialed into the same frequency. So I can just, bring that to them, and then they can help me go from the fear reality, that like tight knot, and just help me remember everything else that exists alongside the fear. So the fear might still actually be there, right? But I went for an ultrasound yesterday, and they started to I never talk to the hospital anymore, but when I was there, they were like, oh, so why aren't you coming in for blah 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 blah? And I'm like, because I don't really want you to keep telling me all the things I should be afraid of, is literally what I said. So she didn't like that answer.
I'm glad you're speaking up. I mean, for real.
And so but the thing is that when I have my team, when I have my community of people, and this is what I offer other people, so right, this is what I do for a living, so I connect to those people for me, and then they bring me back to the expanded state.
Mm.
And then once I'm in the expanded state, I remember that that is my natural state, that is actually the state that I am the healthiest and happiest and most whole, most resourced, most connected, most available to my baby, most in tune with my body. And I get into that state, and I'm like, okay, fear, you can be here. I love Elizabeth Gilbert. She did you read Big Magic?
Oh, it's a must read. I read that so long ago. It's one of those
Okay,
books.
well, I highly recommend everybody reads this book, whether or not you're an artist. But she talks about how fear can come on the road trip, but it has to sit in the back seat, and it's not allowed to give directions.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right. And I
Yep.
use that metaphor all the time, personally and professionally, of just like, it's there. It's just gonna be there. It's a reality. It's part of the spectrum of life experience. But who is driving? You get to decide who's driving.
For sure.
And so that's what I just keep coming back to. And so I have a visit with my midwife. She checks me out. She, feels my baby. We listen to the baby. We talk about all the things. And then I'm like, okay, it's all good. Like, I can just keep going. Like, because she's looking at the reality of my body and my baby in the moment, not projecting all of these worst case scenarios onto us. And that's incredibly helpful.
So good. As you're talking, I'm thinking about, what common obstacles do you see with women as they're wanting to maybe call in a baby? And you've experienced, like you said, the medical side with treatments, and you've turned to this more holistic kind of soulful approach. And we need both, right? We do need both. But I know shadow work is something you dive into, but like, what are some of the things that you see maybe keep a woman from reaching those desires, or making it harder to get to those desires of becoming a mom? Like, can you think of any things that you see with the women that you work
Yeah.
with?
Yeah. So, one of the main things is that people are really stuck in their heads
Mm.
and not in their bodies. And that getting into your body and moving what you feel through your body brings you to the truth. And sometimes, like me, it brings you to the truth of like, this is my destiny. This is what I was meant to do with my life. And so I'm just clear that I'm going towards it against all odds. Or, like I have a friend who really, really struggled on her journey, lost many babies, more than I did, and got to the place where she was like, maybe I'm meant to mother in a different way. And so, but that comes from being in your body. The body is holding this much more dynamic wisdom than your mind, which is like all of your conditioning, and it's the culture, and it's everything you hear when you go to the doctor. I mean, I'm telling you, none of the doctors made me feel good. None of the doctors made me feel excited. And they were all like, oh, you have a 50% chance. And like, you're about to spend your life savings, and you hear you have a 50% chance. Like, that's, it's like not, you're not like partying with excitement when you hear that. And a lot of people get even less of a chance. And so it's disheartening when you stay in that space of being in your head, and your head is so incredibly creative and capable of coming up with every worst case scenario you could possibly think about. And so it's depressing. It's really depressing, but your body, like, that's the place where you can actually make yourself feel good. You can go for a swim in the ocean and feel that tingle all over your body. You can go to the hot springs and go to a yoga class and like go to a ecstatic dance and feel the aliveness in your body, and you start to feel. I mean, this is one of the things that I think happens to a lot of people when they're trying to get pregnant, is they lose the connection to the pleasure that's available through their sexuality. Right. So this is like one of the huge things that I work with people, is like, how do you stay connected to pleasure on your own and or with a partner when you are trying to conceive a baby? Like, I swear to God, I conceived my baby through self-pleasure. Like, I conceived my baby with doing sex magic the night before my IVF transfer. I have been literally I spent the entire first trimester getting through the nausea and the horrible feelings with pleasure. And so that's in the body. You can't when you do it in your mind, you're just generating escapism, is pretty much what's happening. Like the pleasure of scrolling on Instagram or watching Netflix or whatever. So I think that that's the main thing, is just like, when you're in the body, there's like an unlimited amount that can be felt and moved and enlivened
I
in a
think
way
that's
that
so
you,
nice.
yeah.
So that'd be one of the first steps for anyone listening, because there are many who are in their head, and it might not be just the easiest switch, right? Like people would say, okay, this is great. How do I do this? It's a choosing and a choice to explore some movement, some breath work, a class, like put yourself maybe in a different environment, seek out a different practitioner. I mean, what would you add?
Yeah, all of those things, I would say. I think that because when we're on a fertility journey, it's so intimate and personal. It's not always like you go to a yoga class and it's kind of like it kind of takes the edge off, you
Mm.
know? So I would say more one-on-one work is really what I recommend. I mean, I'm biased because this is what I do with people. So I would say come see me when I come off maternity leave in January. I'd be glad to help. There's a lot. You had my friend Marina on the show, and she's amazing. She was one of my teachers in my coaching program, and there's a lot of us out there who do this work. Um, but everybody has a different thing to process. For some people, there's trauma, there's prior trauma, right? That's being triggered by all of these like probings and exams and clinical people who are not sensitive. And for some people, you're actually having the initial trauma. Like I didn't have any sexual trauma prior, but I had a physically traumatizing experience from one of the best fertility doctors in San Francisco.
You shared that.
um
Gosh,
it's awful.
that's not
Anyways,
talked about it. I mean, if
yeah,
you share anything on that, please do. But no, I just think, yeah, the probing, the exams, there needs to be a little gentler approach of what's the word? Um, Asking, or maybe, yeah,
there needs to be consciousness,
conscious, yeah.
and you know what, there needs to be some love in the room.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because the thing is that when we are literally opening ourselves to a baby, right? Whether we're doing it through making love or we're doing it through, you know, a syringe at home with your gay friend sperm, or you're doing it in the clinic, or with however many. I like to think of the doctors like magicians generally, like all the people in the lab, like these like witchy magicians who are
Yeah.
making my baby in the lab. So however you do it, you're just it's a vulnerable act.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the providers to really honor that this
Mm-hmm.
is very vulnerable. You're not just opening your legs to them, but you're opening your heart. You're opening your whole entire being to these people. And most of them are not holding it as sacred. My very first fertility doctor that I saw, who was like a, holistic obstetrician, the one that first put me on letrozole, he would do that. He was very, very connected, but he wasn't the person that was going to take me all the way through for several reasons. Um, but yeah, most of them, they're, you're just a body, you're just a womb to just thrust the probe into and get you out of here so they can get the next person in. And it's not consent culture. It's still, the medical system is still based on rape culture. I mean, the entire medical system, particularly obstetrics and gynecology, which you could kind of lump, fertility treatments into, is just, it's not consent culture. And some people are getting better at it. But it's still, it's like I go to the pelvic floor physical therapist and she asks me permission with my legs spread. Can I please tell me when you're ready for me to insert my finger inside of your vagina? And I'm like, why is she asking? I'm here, but then I remember she's asking me because she wants it to be my choice.
Yeah.
And she is giving me space to say, I'm ready or I'm not ready. I want this or I don't want this. Like, I have to keep consenting to her touching me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is part of what bonds us together, right? Just like in lovemaking, it bonds us together when she acknowledges that just because I booked that appointment doesn't exactly mean that I'm always going to say yes to her coming inside of me.
Right. These conversations are so important. I mean, this connection to our bodies, to honor the sacred path to motherhood, all of fertility, right? This is your specialty. This is, we both stepped into this kind of work, seeing a need and a gap and supporting women on their path to motherhood. And I also know that photography is something really cool that you do. Are you getting support having someone do birth photography for you? I was curious.
Yeah. So I had an incredible maternity shoot with a local gal, Julia Lorraine Peterson, who is just amazing. It was so cool to get to experience her magic and to be the pregnant person. And that was, I think, kind of around the 20-week mark too. So that was like actually like part of my transition into feeling good. Was she just made me feel so beautiful and sexy, and we did it at the beach, and I didn't try to wear any kind of like, you know, more posed type of stuff. I just literally wore like a bikini and like a halter top. You can see them on my Instagram. Um, and then recently, when I was leading my Juicy Ladies retreat last week, one of my friends from coaching school came, Gray Tanner, and photographed the whole retreat and did some incredible photos of me in the water, and that was such a gift.
I love
So
for women listening. I mean, celebrate your body. I did do some photos, not the kind that I've seen, mine were clothed in a loose dress, but I just think embracing this belly, like we had one embryo, one chance. I mean, I miss my belly. I relish in that time. And it's just, I want other women to just be in that energy too, of like, wow, this is something you never know when it could be your first and only or last, or
oh yeah.
that the intent in your photography to reveal a woman's true power and radiance, to honor the beauty of this fleeting time,
Mm.
help women reveal their glow. Like that, you have a glow right now. For those of you who can't see, you can watch this on YouTube when I post it. But it's just, I'm so excited to know you and like what you're creating, the work you do. And this is just such a joy. Like, I'd love for you to
Mm.
share how you do lead retreats, you lead coaching, you have a course. Like, would you like to share your links or how people can find you?
Yeah. But before that, I just wanted to like punctuate the journey, because we didn't share how I got here, pregnant now, which is that so I ended up finding an egg donor on my own in a clinic in Sacramento, and she was 28, got a ton of really good embryos, and got my husband's sperm, which is a whole nother story for another time, because I had to go through a lot of legal hoops to get that. And I
Even
did,
being married and going,
oh, it's a very long story, so I won't get into it now,
that'll
but
be a part two, another one to
yeah,
be.
there was a paperwork mishap that I had to go to court for and pay like over 10 grand to a lawyer to get the sperm. Total ordeal. I know it was horrible. It was trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma.
Okay.
Um, but anyway, point is that I got it and we made some embryos and we did a fresh transfer for one, and that one took, but then I miscarried it. And then I would, was like, okay, we got to keep going. And maybe that was not a good embryo. We tested the rest of them, or we tested out of, we tested six out of 8 embryos, and then 5 were good. And so then we put this one in on January 2nd, and here they are. So this is an egg donor pregnancy with my deceased husband's sperm. Yeah. So,
Thank you
so
for bringing that back because
yeah.
if you didn't complete the story, please forgive me, everyone listening. Everyone's like, what
Well,
happened? What?
I know people are, I know that like for me, it's been very helpful to hear people's egg donor stories. And I think just the last thing I want to say about that is initially I had a lot of grief about using an egg donor. And the egg donor I found looks nothing like me, shares absolutely no physical traits, no heritage traits. Um, but she has curly hair, and there were like a couple cool like elements about her that I on the little profile that I thought were cool, but really nothing like me. And but she just felt good. And I have to say that I have just been in a complete state of gratitude that I have this opportunity. I drove, hour and a half, 2 hours to get to all of my appointments because it was a cheaper clinic than all the clinics in San Francisco. And it was a million times better in terms of the care that I got. And I loved my team and I had amazing support. And I always brought a friend with me. And, and so I just have to say that like it hasn't been hard to, like, this baby feels like my baby. It doesn't feel like I'm carrying someone else's baby. It really feels like this is the baby that I'm meant to have. And I'm so excited to meet them and to see who they are. But I have zero hard feelings about the egg donor piece. Yeah.
Would you like to share the name of the place again? Where
Yeah.
you can.
So the place that I went to is called California IVF,
Okay.
and it's in Sacramento. And I
Okay.
really, really recommend that clinic for anybody that's in California. It was
Sure.
thousands and thousands of dollars cheaper than San Francisco and much more connected care. I literally had one person that I talked to the entire time, both pregnancies. Yeah.
I'm just curious, will you have a connection with the egg donor or can I ask you that?
So she checked the box that the child can contact her when they turn 18.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that will be the only connection. So I have photos of her, but I don't know her name or any, identifying qualities. I have no idea where she lives. And yeah, so if my child decides that they want to meet her, they can try to find her at 18. Of course, they don't give you any guarantee that you'll actually find them, um, but yeah, there's also 23 and me.
That's changed
Yeah.
this a lot of people to find their
Yeah.
needs and everything. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah. So, but either way, it's like this is the baby that my extended family and community and I conceived together, and they will always have a massive family and like more aunties than they can count. So I know that they will feel really held and loved, and their papa has left a lot of their legacy behind. So I think that they're gonna just really feel a connection on, again, in that expanded reality. That's my intention. Yeah.
This conversation has been so good. And you have a September birthday baby coming. My daughter was born in September and it's
Oh,
special. Like you're radiating, you're glowing. And
thank
thank you
you.
for sharing your
Thank
story
you.
up and helping a lot of people.
That is my wish. It's, you
Yeah.
know, as I've gone through this incredibly harrowing, difficult, life-changing journey, the way that I make sense of it is to think like, can I make medicine of it? You know,
Mhm.
can I find my own way through it? And then can I use it in some way or another to help other people? And I have to say that after all of the losses that I've endured, my capacity to hold space for other people has expanded beyond what I ever imagined I was capable of. I was pretty good at holding space before, but now I can hold much deeper, steadier, more intense, more dynamic space, having literally felt like I was killed, like I was slaughtered brutally. And here I am, you know, radiating passion and pleasure and joy and fertility at 49.
Amazing. I often say like the amount of grief that we experience and loss, it really does expand how much more we can give, how much more we can hold, and really get through anything in life, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that. I really do. And I I mean, I'm not grateful for the pain that I've endured, but I'm grateful for my capacity to, you know, move through the grief into the pleasure and the joy and the love and the connection. You know, I feel a tremendous amount of bonding has come through this with my family. I'm much closer to my parents and to, you know, the people that really showed up for me as a result of all of this. And I'm grateful to be able to see the big picture, and not dwell on, like, you know, pointless pointless things that you'll never care about at the end of your life, you know.
And you don't know I know we talked briefly before in preparation for this call, you're not finding out the gender and you're doing that very intentionally. Do you want to share any kind of final thoughts on that in that area?
Sure. Well, in my coaching practice, I've really come to understand how the gender binary doesn't really work for a lot of people. Even if we identify, let's say, you know, all the people I work with identify as women. I have a couple of non-binary clients, but what I notice is that a lot of us are harmed and damaged by the expectations that come as a result of being sort of forced into the gender binary. And when I started to do my own work around that for myself, I just started to feel like, God, I wish I would have known that I had options to be more gender expansive when I was a little kid. And so I haven't quite decided about pronouns with this child, and I intentionally chose, I mean, I could have chosen the actual sex of the baby because they tested all the embryos, but I got to this place where I'm like, you know what, I just want them to find their way with their gender. And even if they have the pronouns that are associated with their sex, I really want them to feel like they can just be their authentic self. And if that means playing with gender, like, I mean, gender is so fun to play with. That's part of being alive, is like, oh well, one day I can look this way and one day I can look that way. And so I want my child to just feel like they're not constrained to a box. And so now that my whole family and community is used to using they them pronouns for this baby, I mean, they had to get used to it. It was like, oh, are you having two babies? I'm like, no, it's just I don't know who they are. And so I'd like to just kind of see who they are. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I just trust, again, from this place of being in my own body. I just trust that the child is going to show me how they want to express their gender and how they want me to communicate with them and how they want to communicate with the world about their gender. And luckily, I live in the Bay Area where that's actually a safe and acceptable thing to do. So I'm excited just to see how it unfolds and have it be an authentic, embodied exploration.
Wow, I love it. You're
Yeah.
an incredible mom. I haven't told you yet, you are. You're amazing.
Thank you.
I'll drop any links. I'll drop all your links in the show notes. Do you want to share
Great.
anything just in closing? Any
Yeah, yeah, I would love to share. So, I just launched the pre-sale for my course that's called Preparing Your Vagina for Birth. So it's really a vagina centric, or what I like to say, yoni or pussy centric, way of preparing for birth. Most birth preparation courses are talking about the stages of labor and like what to do and how to do it and all this stuff. And what I found over the years was that most of the questions people had is like, what's going to happen down there? How do I not get traumatized? How do I not pee all over myself? How do I enjoy sex later? All those like kind of more intimate questions that are harder to come out when you're in a group of strangers. So I take my kind of signature goofy, silly, lighthearted style and my experience as a sex, love, and relationship coach and just as a person who's witnessed, close to 500 births and just talk about the real stuff that everybody's wondering about and nobody's asking about. And so we use the birth preparation process as a way of getting more connected to our pussies, our yonis, our vaginas, our genitals, and to actually feel how our sexual power, which is our creative power, can support us in opening and softening and expanding in birth, and then continue that into the postpartum time where we really kind of stay in that power instead of letting it kind of dwindle off and get lost in baby land. So I have that course, which you can find on my website, which is brittfohrman.com. And then I'm on Instagram and to varying degrees of presence, and which is the Juicy Ladies on Instagram. And under the Juicy Ladies name, I also lead retreats every summer, this beautiful river in Northern California. I lead women's circles. I lead online and in person pleasure immersions. And I'll be taking a break until January. And then starting in January, I'll be, starting all of this back up again and doing one-on-one coaching with people to do a lot of the work that we talked about. And who knows what else. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of new inspiration coming through after I get to give birth. So I'm excited about
knowing you, it's just the flood of inspiration, creativity will come. That's what happened, after giving birth for me too, and like writing a podcast and all these things like were birthed from all of that. So yes, the creativity I'm sure will continue to flow for you.
For sure.
Yeah, you're just amazing and so grateful. Thank you for this conversation. Just adore you.
Thank you. It's been really great to be here, and I appreciate the depth to which you also just really let in my experience and honored the intensity of it and just really holding it with a lot of love. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
I see that. Thank you.
Yeah.